Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, I feel like this horizontal lines look a little trippy. Never mind. Let's learn, okay? Hi guys. The original link to the video from Verse, great channel, love his videos. The original link to the video, top of the description, below that, link to the Discord. Would love to have you. Will there ever be a united Europe? Do you want my opinion? Probably not. No. Maybe. I don't know.
On November the 1st, 1993, a new union of European governments was formed that would alter the course of the nations of Europe forever. Gone were the years of war and diplomatic strife. It was clear that the founding members of the European Union had one primary goal in mind: a unified Europe, strengthened by the diversity and backgrounds of its member nations. You don't need to look any further than the EU's motto, In Varietate Concordia, a Latin phrase which simply means united in diversity. However, things aren't as simple as they seem. Although the original purpose of the EU was to provide a general economic, political, and military support structure that its constituent nations could take advantage of for mutual prosperity and protection, it became clear that many vocal advocates of a transnational European identity wanted to take the European Union a step further. Why stop at just a union of member states, when Europe could be something so much greater?
Okay, I am going to give my opinion here. So diversity is our strength, or whatever you say. You know, that's a big thing in America. Our diversity of culture and mindset is what makes us, strong. The problem is that the United States has a single history, right? I mean, you can learn about state history and stuff like that, but we have been American. You know, I often say, I'm New England before I'm America, whatnot. At the end of the day, of course, I'm with America, right? But you guys don't have that. Not only do you not have that, a shared history, you have budding history. So it's like, oh, look at the statistics of, like, if Europe was one country, how rich it would be, how many people, and everything. Yeah, that would be great. But you have so many countries that don't have a shared history and might have certain gripes with each other in history, and trying to get everyone on the same page further than it already is, I think is so much more complicated and difficult than just, oh, wouldn't it be great if Europe was one? Does that make sense?
Why go partway to a full integration when a European federation could further the interest of all of the people of Europe? Those that advocate for this federation are fighting for a new government, which many thought impossible just 100 years ago. So what would a European federation look like? And is it even possible? Well, to look forward to the future of Europe, we have to turn back to the past to see how the European Union we have today came to be. The year is 1948. 3 years prior, Europe was ravaged by a brutal and unforgiving war, which was estimated to have taken tens of millions of lives, not to mention the vast amount of industry and economic development the war had destroyed. In light of these horrible events, and considering the fact that internationalism had been brought to recent popularity with the rise of the UN, international defense was a high priority among many Western European nations. So a few of these countries came together to form what would be known as the Western Union. This union, initially composed of the nations of France, the UK, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, was formed for the purpose of providing defense to all member nations, while also including the possibility of further economic, cultural, and political cooperation. However, it didn't end there. Several other pacts would be formed amongst the nations of Europe, eventually leading to the European Union with the Maastricht Treaty and the Euro. Since then, it has grown in size from only 6 to 27, spanning most of the continent and forming a massive political and economic bloc, which has been competitive with many of the world's greatest superpowers today. When you compare the Europe of the 1950s to how it is today, it has become a lot more federalized, even if it's not technically a federation today. So what comes next, if anything? Well, it's impossible to know for certain. However, a European federation could look much like a stronger European Union today. See, right now, the EU is still fundamentally just a treaty, whereas a European federation would be a nation-state with clear and defined roles, borders, and aspects, which can possibly be compared to something like the US. The European Federation would have the highest court which issued supreme decisions. It would have a legislature with the ability to tax its population universally, and it would most likely have its own military instead of relying on constituent nations to back it in times of armed conflict. Because of this, though, a truly united Europe would be a powerful geopolitical entity capable of wielding influence which only the United States and China have today. Assuming all of the EU members agree to the formation of a European Federation, it would have a population of 450 million people and an earth-shattering $17 trillion GDP, making it only third in the world behind China and the United States. In terms of military strength, although member states of the EU are typically non-aggressive, a few of them, like France for example, have large and impressive militaries. And of course, being united means they'd be way stronger. A combined military of the 27 member states of the EU could currently field an impressive 1.3 million active duty military personnel, roughly on par with the size of the US armed forces. The combined military expenditure is an impressive $225 billion.
I think that's around China.
Of China's $290 billion. And they don't even dedicate a large part of their GDP to it when compared to the US. Their technology would be better too, as they'd all be united in what they're developing. Because, for example, while the US military uses just 30 weapon systems, the EU's many separate militaries use almost 180, 6 times.
Is that a good thing? Guys, I hope I'm not being, negative Nancy here. Maybe I'm a contrarian. I just trying to play devil's advocate here, okay? And that's there's sometimes some trouble getting countries into NATO, even with the war going on, and the entire thing becoming a single country is such a bigger step. What do I know? Okay, I'm learning.
As many. These changes would make Europe dictate its own future and not continue to live at the expenses of America and rely on them, as well as protect itself against the rise of India and other growing countries. However, this type of talk is easy. We can speak all day about just how strong a European Federation would be and how it would be able to assume the role of a global superpower. But it doesn't actually matter, because there's currently a lot of things making this unlikely. So what's stopping a European Federation right now? Well, where to begin? Perhaps the biggest issue is national identity. Many people in Europe are proud of their country's identity, culture, and history. They don't want it to be stripped away to conform a European identity. Because, let's face it, a successful European Federation requires a fundamental shift in identity for everyone. They'd need to feel European, as deeply and predominantly as US citizens feel American. And this is kind of a hard thing to do when you're comparing, say, Norway and Hungary. It's nothing like Texas and California.
Yeah, imagine living in Hungary, right? Or Romania, Hungary, and your decisions on your citizen. I'm assuming if it's one country, then you have to have one leader of Europe who is going to be elected, obviously being from one country. Although they're elected, it's just, okay, so I'm in Hungary, and I have to, my policy is going to be decided by the, commander-in-chief, the leader of Portugal, or like the leader of France, or leader of Sweden, or vice versa if you're from, I don't know, Estonia. And not just your economic and military decisions, your social decisions, everything decided by someone way over there in Europe. You have the language barrier, which is becoming less of a big deal, with technology translations and stuff, but
where, while there may be a huge difference in the politics and lifestyle, they still firstly identify as American. Every European country has thousands of years of unique cultures and people. You can't just simply merge them together.
That's my issue.
In chaos and division. Just look at what happened with Yugoslavia, for example. There is also nationalist sentiment, and therefore Euroscepticism as well, which has been on the rise in Europe. Brexit is an obvious example of this, and many nationalist parties have been winning elections in countries such as Italy and Sweden. These parties aren't one-off examples of nationalists winning elections in a continent which generally trends towards internationalist social democracy. They're events which are indicators of a trend towards a more nationalist view of Europe. Those who supported Brexit felt that the EU wasn't the future for their country. They felt they should leave before they get more tied down, because they could better forge their future independently of the political control of the European Union. See, anyone who still feels a national identity can potentially be a liability, as they will fight for their national interests, which inevitably leads to inefficient government in a federal Europe. Then, with this in mind, a federal EU would be a heaven for corporate lobbyists. Just like in the US, you now need to lobby only one government to affect all 450 million people instead of lobbying each country individually. The other, yet still big thing stopping a European federation is things like currency problems. There's still
I think currency problems is the least of your worries.
Number of countries waiting for the euro or not wanting it altogether. Of the 27 EU countries, 7 of them are not using it. Bulgaria, Denmark, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Sweden, and the Czech Republic. There's 2 groups: the countries that can adopt the euro but don't want to, and the ones who want the euro but can't adopt it due to not meeting the financial stability requirements. The wealthy countries refusing to join is because of wanting to keep an independent monetary policy, lack of public support, and just the fact they don't want to politically commit to the ever closer union goal. And on the other hand, the EU can't just accept these non-qualified countries to join because of the risks it can have. Even if you as a country have the perfect financial discipline, as soon as a country like Greece goes into a financial crisis due to spending problems, high debt and deficits, you and everyone else part of the currency are forced to save them to preserve the value of the currency. And let's face it, no country wants to have to bail out other ones. It's another big reason why some countries are afraid to adopt the euro really. Eventually this might not be a problem, but it's looking like at least a decade away until then, and that's being generous. Lastly, another big question is, who truly benefits from this? The 2 main countries advocating for a European federation are France and Germany, and it's obvious why. They already have most of the power in the current union, and a federalization means more and more control over the autonomous governments of EU members. That all being said, there's other options that have been floated around. Even if a European federation is unlikely, the Russian war against Ukraine has changed the playing field quite a bit in favor of stronger European cooperation. A Switzerland-type model rather than a US federation one is possible, with subdivisions like cantons respecting the different languages and cultures of the European peoples, and a more direct democracy to not let a unified Europe become a recipe for easier control over more people. Or, forgetting the idea of uniting together like this at all, a strong trade alliance can sort out many geopolitical problems. Because, frankly, money talks, and then a military alliance can sort out the rest. Federalism isn't needed for either of these things technically. Regardless though, whatever happens will definitely take a long time, and it can't be rushed. It's taken over 50 years for the EU to reach 27 members, and even then we can't say that they're all united. It will also take decades to evolve into a European identity. Something must happen though. The current EU is sort of in a state of limbo, with either going on to federalization or back to being just a single market in its cards. It's currently too middle road to be truly successful long term without major changes. With the European Council recently approving the Strategic Compass, a plan to strengthen the EU's defense and security policy by 2030, we see the militaries now slowly being united, with the establishment of an EU rapid deployment team of up to 5,000 troops. So despite all the disagreements member countries have, there's proof that Europe is still slowly but surely moving towards being more united.
Great video from Verst. Look, military alliances, very reasonable to think that you can get more of Europe under it. If you're a weak country, especially if you're closer to a country like Russia and you're looking at what happened to Ukraine. So a defense alliance in Europe very seems feasible, right? Obviously there's NATO, but an even more expanded one. Even economically, like the EU, right? Much more feasible. But there, as soon as you get to the identity, if you want to call it nationalist sentiment, I feel like nationalist always comes with like a negative connotation. But I think people overlook when they see these stats. Like, why not? What if South America united into one country, right? Look how much more powerful it would be, and people would have to negotiate. Yeah, that's true. But you're ignoring the cultural aspect, which is very significant in my opinion, in by saying a united Europe, that makes me think, okay, you're talking about Europe being one country with only one ambassador to countries around the world from Europe. So your country is going to be represented by them, by whoever's elected in there. Culturally, there are a lot of cultural differences, right? There's going to be, if you're a unified country, there's going to be some policy changes on that might make you uncomfortable. And then there's just the unknown thing where you don't know what's going to happen in the years to come. Interesting idea. Clearly, it would be even an enormous superpower on the level of China and the U.S. But I care about if it's feasible or not. And right now, with the little I know, I would say no. And when I say no, I mean Europe becoming a country with one head of state, as in one prime minister or one president, whatever you want to call it, right? One head of state. That seems very unlikely. But I know very little. You guys probably know more. Let me know what you think. If I'm wrong or any comments in general, would love to see it. And I'll see you guys next time. All right. Bye, guys.